Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you again in our 39th edition of the webinar. So, recently we had a very interesting conversation with Dr. Anindita Desharkar on the AI agent. Now, so from there, right, this is the right next step for all of us where we need to understand a little bit more about the AI agents. Now, today we have a excellent topic on the AI agent swarms, combining the swarm intelligence of ants with Dr. Strange's theory of 14 billion futures. So at first glance, this topic may sound like a fascinating mix of biology, science fiction, and the artificial intelligence. And the topic is AI agent swarms combining the swarm intelligence of ants with Dr. Strange's theory of 14 million possible futures. And honestly, that's exactly what it makes so relevant to the future that we are entering. Now, if we think about biology, if we observe the nature, ants individually are tiny and simple creatures. But together, they build colonies, they discover optimal paths, they adapt to disruptions and solve complex problems without waiting for instruction from our central leaders. And that we have been seeing in our home everywhere. So when we see a swarm of ants is coming and we try to put some blockers in front of them, they'll surely bypass that and they'll find their own way. It may take a step back for a moment, but it will again find their own path and join everyone. And there is no centralized instruction coming for them. So they reorganize themselves. So their collective intelligence is what makes them powerful. Now, so from there, if we come to sci-fi, so comparing that with the famous moment from the Avengers, the Infinity War, where Doctor Strange explores millions of possible futures to identify one path that could succeed. The idea of rapidly simulating possibilities before taking action is increasingly becoming possible with modern AI systems. Now, when the last thing, that is where we are today, we know that AI has been transforming itself. Now, it's not something new that we all know. So let's not get into that discussion anymore. But since AI has democratized itself, we have seen a huge transformation of AI in the last 3 years. So today, AI is evolving from being just a chatbot or an automation tool into a network of intelligent agents that can collaborate, negotiate, learn, and make decisions together. Instead of one AI doing everything, we are moving towards an ecosystem of specialized AI agents working collectively, much like a digital ant colonies, with the ability to explore multiple scenarios, adapt dynamically, and respond in real time. And that arises some fascinating questions for all of us. Are we entering in a era of decentralized intelligence? Will organizations of the future operate with AI agent teams alongside human teams? How will leadership, governance, agile ways of working, and product strategy evolve in such a world? And most importantly, where does human judgment fit in, where AI can simulate thousands or millions of possible outcomes? Now, to help us unpack these possibilities, we have an expert speaker with us today, Mr. Kaushik Lahiri, who brings perspective from AI, product innovation, agile transformation, enterprise strategy, and emerging technology. So without wasting our time, let me introduce Mr. Kaushik Lahiri, who is an Associate Vice President at Financial Software and Systems. So Kaushik Lahiri is a technology leader with over 2 decades of experience in enterprise architecture, cloud computing, cybersecurity, and scalable software design. He holds a master's degree in computer science from IIT Delhi and began his career at IBM, where he spent 21 years progressing from a developer to architect. And somehow I'm fortunate that I got a chance to work with him for at least 12 years together, or if not more. He later served as the VP of IT and CISO at Shrey and as an enterprise architect at Hexaware Technology, leading initiatives in enterprise modernization, cybersecurity, cloud adoption, and digital transformation. Currently, he is head of architecture at Financial Software and Systems, where he drives enterprise architecture strategy for cloud native and API driven microservices platform. He holds multiple industry certification, has authored technical papers, and holds 5 patents with strong interest in data structure, system design, machine learning, and generative AI. Alongside a passion for mentoring computer science enthusiasts, connecting them with industry practices. So, Kaushik, my first thing, right, to set the context. Today, most people interact with AI as a single AI assistant, answering questions or performing tasks. But now we are hearing about teams of AI agent collaborating like a digital workforce. Maybe something like a scaling up of Agile. If we try to bring the uh, similarity from Agile, Agile was starting with a single cross-functional co-located team, and now we understood that a single team cannot help, so we need to go for a scaling up, enterprise agility or something. So to set the context for everyone, what exactly are AI agent swarms? And how are they fundamentally different from traditional single agent AI system? Over to you.
Sure. Thanks for that excellent introduction. And Shubho, by the way, was the most expert uh, person in Agile I knew of in my career. So I worked with him not 12, I think I worked more than 15 years with Shubho. And so uh, this area, so I'll try to keep it as non-technical as possible, the discussion. And still, if you have questions, you can ask me. So it's a discredit if I say something which doesn't, which is too much jargon or which is not clear. So I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. So very simply put, uh, first I'll very briefly introduce what is an agent, right? So agents are nothing but like the agents we have seen daily. So we have LIC agents, right? We have insurance agents. What are they going to do for us? Why do we need these agents? We could have gone to, say, an insurance company and bought our insurance ourselves. But we have an agent who understands our needs, who creates certain products or create certain relations based on what we need, based on what is available in the market, what is best for me, and helps me in that way. So you can think of that agent as an assistant, a very intelligent assistant who is more knowledgeable, but who knows about my problems as well. Now that is where agents came in. So when we started, so AI is something which has started say more than 50 years back. I'm not going to that, but generative AI is something which came into being existent in the last 4 or 5 years, not more than that. But towards the end of last year, this thing called agents came into place, where we are not only asking AI to provide us answers to our questions, we have something which is equivalent to a human agent who can take decisions for us, who can apply intelligence, use their professional knowledge, and take some decision for us, or even act, take the decision and act, maybe buy a policy for us. So that's the thing. They can buy a ticket, airline ticket for us. And all that was very good. But there is one particular problem. So I can put the equivalent is as you have a new to call up people when to buy certain things, maybe buy things himself or herself if time permits, and that is very useful. But think of it, that agent or that intern or that person, that assistant that you have has certain preconceived notions. That the agent thinks only for himself or herself. So he or she is very intelligent, he or she is very efficient, can do everything. But there is something lacking because, say, you have that person has to schedule a meeting and probably there is a traffic jam on the way. So that meeting cannot be held. People would not be able to attend that meeting. And agent, even though is very intelligent, he doesn't know what to do. He's stuck over there. Probably there is another person who is a localite and who knows, who has more expertise on different ways to reach the same venue where the meeting would take place. And if these two people could talk with each other, they could have taken a decision that was much more optimal, to so to say. So the meeting would still take place in spite of the traffic jam, and it will be a success. So that is where the concept of swarms comes in. Because we don't know all the time exactly how things are going to take place. Things change very rapidly, very dynamically. We have seen during COVID, we have seen big businesses fall flat because things soon change. People could not adapt so fast to such a high, unexpected change. And that is where agent swarms come in. So think, instead of that one assistant, if you have 1,000 assistants, and each assistant have a different perspective, different expertise, different field of view, and they can discuss, coordinate with each other, and solve a problem. Even that problem be much more better, a much more better solution, much more robust solution, a much more resilient solution than if there was just one person thinking for the solution. So that is where the concept of agent swarms
Thank you.
comes.
Thank you so much. Now, it's a great lucid example of like what is an AI agent and what are the swarm of agents. Very good. Now, when we observe ants on bees, it's fascinating how thousands of tiny creatures, each with very limited individual intelligence, can still work together to solve complex problems like finding the shortest route to the food, as I said earlier, adapting to the obstacles or protecting the colony, all without any central leader directing every move. Now we are now beginning to see a similar ideas emerging in AI through agent swarms, where multiple AI agents collaborate, specialize, and coordinate dynamically instead of relying on one large centralized AI system. Now let me give you a practical example. Now think about you are calling a customer support help desk for your credit card or something. You may have many questions, right? But now these days, as you know, right, even if let's say we have got a human person interacting with you. So first they will ask question, right? You explain the problem, then say, okay, sir, let me fetch your balance, right? Your last statement. Again, you ask another question, when is my due date? They'll go back and again try to see. So it's the kind of sequential approaches. Now think about a situation that you have got as soon as you enter the card data, there are multiple small portlets or the dashboard which is opening in front of you, and you have got all the information acting parallelly, and you have got all the information in front of you. So one AI agent may be understanding the customer sentiment, another checks for policy compliance, another analyzes historical tickets, another predicts the escalation risk, and so on and so forth. Now, individually, each agent has a narrow possibility or responsibility, but together they can create an intelligent and adaptive support system, very similar to how ants collectively solve problems as a colony. Now, at the same time, AI agents are still machines, not living organisms. So, ant evolved through survival instinct and biological adaptation over millions of years, while AI operates on algorithm, data, rules, and computational goals. So the question becomes, what can we realistically learn from the swarm intelligence in nature, like ants or bees, and what does not translate well into AI? Maybe Kaushikda, you want to add some algorithm roots behind this paradigm. Over to you.
Correct. See, this idea of mimicking nature in an algorithm is something which is there for last 30, 40 years. So even so during my master's, I used to like one of my dissertations was on this one example of a genetic algorithm. So there are there is a class of algorithms called generative algorithms. Why that is close to nature is, see, how have we evolved, right? How have humans evolved to be such wonderful individuals? So this has happened over millions of generations. So we have become smarter, we have become stronger using certain principles like survival of the fittest, say, or say adaptability to certain environments, adaptability to certain nature. And those exactly, so those things Those things is what have inspired humans that why don't we follow nature? So I'll give you an example. So say termites. When termites build their home, we have seen that there are large termite molds, which are, if you look at it from a termite level, those are like huge castles, huge fortresses. So how do they build those fortresses from just balls of mud? So what they do is that they put certain balls of mud, say pile up on pile up balls of mud, and those mud, those piles, those balls may be stable, may fall down. And whenever they fall down, they inject certain things called pheromones inside them. So pheromones are nothing but signals. So similarly, if so that is one thing. So that is one thing, that if there was a lot of things collaborating with each other, a lot of agents collaborating with each other, and some would be successful, some would not be successful, some would learn something from experience, and each one can be experts in certain fields. So they can take multiple decisions, multiple unique decisions, and they collaborate with each other. Then we can build our own castle very easily, very fast. The problem though is that nature has time on its side. So it can do these experiments over millions of years. But we have to do this thing very fast. So it will be near real time. So within milliseconds, not even seconds, we have to take this decision. We have to act. So that is where we are at a disadvantage. We don't have so much time. And our problems are much more complex. For an ant or a bee. So I didn't even talk about bees. So bees have this waggle dart, right? They actually fly in the form of a figure eight. And the way they fly tells many things, that where is the nearest place where where the hive is, where they can store things, store the honey. Now, how much strong that signal is, where to go it, what is the direction of it. So all these things they can communicate using those signals. So if we could do the same thing, but in a much faster way, that is where we can learn from nature. We can apply those things. And so evolution is one. This evolutionary algorithms is one. Bees and the ants are there. Then birds. So there is something called swarm intelligence in birds, and we have several algorithms like particle swarm optimization. Right? For ants, as you said, we have ant colony optimization. So we have particle swarm optimization, where see the way birds are known to travel. So you have heard of Arctic terns, maybe. So they travel from Arctic region right up to, they cross right across the world. So several thousands of kilometers they travel. So how do they travel? How do they know direction? So if you have ever seen if you observe closely, a flock of birds, they have a leader and they have certain followers, right? And this leader is not the leader for all the time. So this leader keeps changing. So there is something, so there is a concept of a global leader and a local leader. So when they see that a local leader has emerged, that a local direction is much better than the other directions, because there is a signal that that is the new leader to follow. They keep changing those things. They keep changing direction, but overall, they will find the most optimal way to reach their destination. So this optimization from nature has been there for millions of years, and that is where we can learn from. So uh, that is a signal for.
Excellent,
And
excellent
yeah.
insight and analogy. Thank you so much. Now, we talked about biology. Now let's come into the little bit of sci-fi, right? So we often hear reference to AI exploring millions of possible future, almost like the famous scene from Avengers Infinity War, where Doctor Strange evaluates 14 million outcomes before choosing the winning path. Well, that sounds little cinematic. The underlying concept is surprisingly relevant in real world AI system. Now, modern AI systems increasingly simulate, predict, and evaluate multiple possible scenarios before taking action. If I may give some example, let's say recommendations engine test countless user behavior pattern. Autonomous vehicle anticipate different movements of nearby cars and pedestrians. Cybersecurity system model attack paths before threats occur. And supply chain AI evaluates multiple disruption scenario to identify the most resilient option. But the key difference is that AI does not literally see the future. Instead, it generates probabilistic model, as you said, of what could happen based on the available data, pattern, constraint, goals, and history. The more dynamic and uncertain the environment, the more valuable this capability becomes. So my question to you is, how does the idea of exploring 14 million possible futures translate into real world AI systems?
Sure. And I cannot resist myself from giving that story. It's so interesting. So, if Avengers, uh, for those of you who don't know, there is Captain Stark. Right? Captain Stark is an absolute mechanical genius, and he can put all sorts of outfits. He has a lot of capabilities in a mechanical engineering. And he has a team, each of them have certain unique capabilities, right? And that is how they solve problems of the world. So they solve problems of the universe, better to say. And here is a situation where Captain Stark is trying to plan out their next strategy. So they have enemies that are going to attack them, and he wants to plan a strategy. And what happens is Stark has an idea, and his team members have a different idea, and they start quarreling. No, your idea will just fall flat, and all these things happen. But Doctor Strange, who is also a team member, is nowhere to be found. So they look around and see that Doctor Strange is sitting like this, with his hand on his head, and he's like uh, peering upwards and is thinking of something. So I think, what's the matter? Doctor Strange says, I have looked into 14 billion and I think 65 futures, right? So 14 million 65 futures. And I have simulated so it's like a simulation, like we do in computer science. So, what if? So there are 14 million 65 possibilities, and just one possibility is success. All the others will all die. Right? So that is where the idea comes in. And we have tried to do this sort of simulations again for a long time, but now with agents, it becomes very useful. Think of chess. So we used to so IBM was one of the companies that first invented a chess program that could beat Kasparov. Kasparov was then a world champion without question first. So
The Deep
it
Blue.
goes
Deep
the
Blue.
Deep
Yeah.
Blue, the Deep Blue. So IBM invented Deep Blue, and that was able to beat Kasparov at chess, and that was a huge,
Similarly,
that was
millions of moves was
millions of
introduced.
moves. Yes, and that is where this thing comes up. So this algorithm is called Monte Carlo tree search. So what this tree means is, with every move, there are multiple possible moves that are possible that the opponent can take, right? And as you go, it goes to so each position in chess has a positional advantage, and that advantage is calculated based upon what are the most largest number of successful wins that can go. So if you travel along the tree right up to the leaf, it will be a win or a loss. So the node from which you have the maximum number of successful paths to a win has the highest uh, score, right? And you make that move, something like that. So that is how skill-based exploratory computer science started. And now it has become very, very relevant because a lot of things are happening autonomously. So if you think, say, I'm just switching to a modern domain, financial problems. So you have this trading algorithms, right? So trading algorithms has been there, but right now trading is like you have a market, you have multiple ways you can invest, and certain investments give you the maximum benefit, while others do not, right? So where do you invest, and what can happen if the market falls tomorrow? If like there is an attack on Hormuz Strait tomorrow, what happens, right? Anything can happen. So there can be things in politics, in war, in no, you don't know what, health, anywhere, any sector, and that affects the market drastically. So and what happens is, even a second advantage in a market can fetch you millions of dollars. The volume of
Right.
trade that goes on every second is huge, huge. It's like mind-boggling.
Correct.
So in that situation, if you can use this sort of exploratory search and find out best possible move very fast, as fast as possible, then that is likely to give you a lot of advantage. I can give you another example where this is already being used. So this Amazon, we are using Amazon Prime so much these days. Now, Amazon warehouse. So, how does Amazon do things in the fastest possible way? They have warehouses, right? And they like they predict what sort of demand will happen at a certain region, and they have warehouses in that region where they bring products. Now, if you've ever visited a warehouse, you'll see it's a mind-boggling thing over there. You have huge, heavy things scattered all over the place, and you have to organize those things, keep things in such a way that it's like easy to find. Because the every second lost in bringing out things from the warehouse is seconds lost in your timeline, and you were promising customers that I will deliver something within a day. That's easier said than that. That's a very difficult thing, but they have been able to do it. Now they have thousands of robots. So they made a purchase of a company called Kip System, and they had this robot which manufactured this robot, and these robots are just like agentic swarms, and they can collaborate, they can predict, they don't collapse into each other. So if you put humans over there, they'll definitely whack each one out. So it's like there are so many corridors, so many ways of stacking, piling these things, these items. And that is how they are using this sort of swarm intelligence already in their warehouses to find the fastest way of storing and removing things. But there is still a lot of work to be done in that area. But the point remains that this is where the 14 million features come in place. We may not have actually 14 million because that is way too high, computationally costly. But we can think of the more situations we can think of, each presenting a different scenario, the more robust our solutions are going to be, the more profitable we can do our business, profitable we can do our business, the more robust we'll be against hacking attacks. Because even attacks are not human anymore. There are automated systems. They are simulating all these attacks, and they find the weak spot within seconds. So this is where this 40 million features come. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Now, we already talked about that local leadership, global leaderships, right? So how from the centralized leadership, right, they can rely more on the decentralized leadership, right, that you already talked about. Now, the AI agent swarms promise speed, adaptability, and collaborative intelligence, but they also introduced a whole new level of complexity as multiple AI agents are working together. So when the multiple autonomous agents interact, the challenges like coordination conflict, unpredictable behavior, bias amplification, governance, accountability become much harder to manage. And sometimes it becomes like passing the buck. Who will take the accountability? As multiple, there is no centralized architecture, but multiple autonomous engines are working independently. Now, for example, in an enterprise systems, one AI agent may optimize cost while another prioritizes customer experience, potentially creating conflicting decision, typically what we call it as a trade-off. So as organizations move towards a swarm-based AI ecosystems, what do you see as the biggest challenge in making these systems reliable, scalable, and trustworthy in the real world?
Right. Right. So first thing is that going back to that assistant, that intern who has just joined office, who is very intelligent, but thinks in a straight line. So one person doing the thinking. Now, problem is you bring in thousands of thousand interns instead of one. You have thousand interns who are all capable, similarly intelligent, similarly capable. But think of it in this way: if all of them are very similar, they're like twins, or they have very similar thought processes, would they be very effective? Probably not, because it's like one mind instead of one mind thinking one track. It's thousand minds thinking one track. So you have to be diverse. So unless you are diverse, the biggest problem with coordination is that they develops a certain sort of herd mentality. You see, we have a herd of sheep, right? They are all going towards a direction. Now there is one herd who goes over a cliff, just falls down from the cliff. Do you think the other sheep that are following, they'll be intelligent enough to change direction, tell their followers that don't come here because there's a problem? They won't, because they have a herd mentality. They'll all follow and fall down in the same cliff. That is exactly what will happen if we use a single LLM. LLM is like large language model that has all the AI, generative AI intelligence all together in one place. But problem is that is trained by a single set of documents that has similar sort of bias. That if they're biased over something, that they have preconceived notions because of the training material that they were fed with, then there is a huge possibility of a herd mentality. And that would never succeed. That would actually, any small problem will get scaled up by that 14 million, right? So we have to make sure the agents have different sources of information. They have different viewpoints. Otherwise, the coordination becomes a problem. And the other problem is with coordination is that it can, unless it's controlled in a certain way, it can become an overhead. So it will be like a DDoS attack. It's a DDoS attack, distributed denial of service. There's so many pieces of information getting bombarded on a particular individual that it breaks down. So an agent breaks down. It's simply unable to take in any more information. So there has to be some sort of control. And that is where hierarchical swarms are coming into action. So there will be hierarchy. There will be no DDoS type of attacks. Too many things are getting shared. And of course, there should not be herd mentality. So there should be different sources, different sets of training documents that are fed to these different groups of agents so that they don't think all in the same way. There is diversity in thought because that is where two main characteristics of these systems will come out. One is the emergent nature of thinking. So a new way of thinking would emerge based upon collective intelligence instead of one way of thinking. That is one. And second is exploratory. So there will be multiple paths that will be explored instead of being stuck in one single threaded, which is called, like technically, mathematically, it's called a local optima. So people are not stuck. Agents are not stuck in a local optima. They globally explore all possibilities to come up with the most optimal solution. So these are the challenges we have to handle.
Brilliant. Now, as we learnt about a lot of coordination challenges and how to optimize or overcome those things, right? The next situation comes in that maybe a little bit of autonomy and control. So as AI agent swarms become more autonomous, right, as we talked about, we are trying to move away from the centralized part and we are giving them more autonomy. Organization face a delegate balancing act, right, that we kind of talked about also. We want AI agents to act independently, adapt quickly, and make real-time decisions, right? But at the same time, the business still need governance, accountability, human oversight. Now, some of the generative AI principle, right, of or responsible AI principles will come into picture. For examples, in a financial systems, one AI agent may optimize profit while another focuses on compliance or the risk control. Without that right guardrail, autonomous decisions could quickly create unintended consequences. Now that we know that all the countries are now putting some level of governance, like in India we have a DPDP and other things. So still the question remains: how do we balance the autonomy and the control in a swarm of AI agents?
Right. I'll start with analogy. Do ants have ethics? I don't know ethics. I'm not at I've not been able to decipher if they have ethics because they have one single mind that they want to maximize their food searching possibilities. They want to stay alive. Now we are fortunate. we can put in responsible AI, we can put in ethical AI, so we can put all these things. The problem is if we overdo this, if we overdo that, so we have to put guardrails. Guardrails will be required. Now, if we put too many guardrails, then again we get transformed to that single thought process. So we have to give some level of autonomy. So that is required. But at the same time, we have to put guardrails. So how do we put those guardrails? That is where we have to play a more like observant nature. So we have to observe. We don't dictate that this is exactly what we should do. Because if we dictate, that emergent nature is lost. That emergent nature, that creative nature of finding solutions is lost. So we don't dictate. We set up a big global goal, let's say supply chain optimization or say cyber security prevention. So cyber hack prevention, something like that. So we put a global goal and we let them run free. What we observe. So we have to see that whether there are certain agents who are following a herd mentality. And then what we have to do, that part of the swarm or that part of the tree, we just prune, we just cut off. Because it will be like a gangrene. If there are more and more people, more and more agents following that herd mentality, they will bring the system down. So that is one. We have to see exactly when are they collaborating, how are they collaborating, like this pheromone. So yeah, actually, how do they collaborate? There will be vector database, there will be event streams, there will be shared memory. That is how these agents will collaborate, right? So exactly are they collaborating? How are they making sense? What is the success rate? What is the reinforcement? So reinforcement is like whenever we are doing something good, some agent is achieving some amount of success, then that needs to be propagated down to others. That's why this is one area where you can succeed. There is a high chance of success. So keep it in mind. So that we have to know. So we have to see what things are getting. Are the right things getting like reinforced or the wrong things getting reinforced? So those are some of the things we need to keep in mind. So what are also like how is agent behavior changing? So how are agents clustering? So we have also seen cases where agents can cheat just like humans. So there are agents who can do certain things. They can see that there's a shortcut, success shortcut, and they'll attribute certain reasons for that shortcut which are not correct. So we have to see. So what is the reason behind why they have chosen certain things as optimal? Is that the correct reason, or there is something fishy going on? Agents can even learn from bad habits, even bad habits. So this is how we need to control. But we don't enforce, we observe.
Right. Great point. Right on that autonomy and the control. Now, if I come again to different dimensions of ethical and responsible AI, as we know, the bias in AI is already a major concern. Most decisions or most discussions focus on single AI model making unfair or skewed decision because of the biased data or the limited perspective. But with the AI agent swarms, the conversation becomes even more interesting. By bringing multiple perspectives together, the system could potentially create more balanced and transparent decisions instead of relying on one centralized AI model. But the opposite risk also exists. If all these agents learn from a similar biased data set or continuously reinforce each other's assumption, the swarm could amplify the bias at a much larger scale. If everyone starts saying right on something, because all of them are taught by the same data set. So the bias gets amplified. And if one person says you won't rely, but if multiple agents say the same things, it creates an influence in your mind. So because decisions are distributed across many interacting agents, identifying the source of bias may become even more difficult. So the organizations move towards collaborative AI system. As organizations move towards collaborating AI ecosystem, can swarm intelligence help reduce bias or does it risk amplifying it? What is your take?
Right. So it's a double-edged sword. So if, if there is a, so if one thing is certain, if we have a single source of training document, there will be bias because see this the way these agents will work is something which is known as tree of thought. So far, we had something called chain of thought. So we have one thought process. So we have a lot, just like humans think, agents think in this way. So one thought process. Because of A, we do B, and because of B, we do C. Now, what we'll think is because of A, we do B. be- Because of B, we can do C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, all sorts of possibilities, and that is how the branching happens, right? So this is tree of thought. Now, if we observe that at certain nodes at a same level, there will be certain tuning because certain things are not successful, certain nodes are not successful. Maybe they are so fast in determining that they're not successful. So those nodes are getting pruned, right? So once those nodes are getting pruned, certain nodes are remaining. Now, these nodes, if we observe carefully, again, that observing is very important. So, if we observe those nodes very carefully, when we see that they are coming from the same source of information, then probably there is a possibility of a bias that we need to look into. So, then the human will go into. Otherwise, as you said, that will scale up, that bias will scale up, and more reinforcement will occur. So, there will be feedback, there will be reinforcement, and that bias will actually be the most successful, that biased notion or that biased solution will be the most successful solution as determined by the agent form. So we have to be careful that the sources of information are heterogeneously distributed. Otherwise, there's a big risk.
Correct. Now, I've been hearing that you are talking about observe, observe, observe. So let's come on the concept of observability. Now, if I may try to give the meaning to the audience, that observability is the ability to understand what is happening inside a system by looking at its output, behavior, and interactions. Now, as AI agent or AI systems evolve from a single model into collaborative swarms of autonomous agent, observability becomes far more complex. It's no longer just about monitoring software performance. It's about understanding how multiple AI agents interact, influence decisions, share context, and collectively produce outcome. For example, in a healthcare ecosystem, one AI agent may analyze symptom, another may evaluate patient history, while another recommends treatment option. If something goes wrong, organizations need visibility not just into the final decision, but into how the swarm arrived there. A little bit of explainability, right? Observability should come here. That means that observability in swarm system may require entirely new capabilities like decision making, decision tracing, interaction mapping, explainability, as I said, and real time governance dashboard. So, as AI agent systems become more decentralized and autonomous, my question to you, Oshik, what does true observability look like? And are current monitoring system and governance models ready for that level of complexity, or it is yet to come?
Yeah, I would say absolutely not, because observability means something entirely different with agent swarm. We have been trained to see observability as logs. So everything,
Right.
whenever a program runs, whenever a system is running, we look at the logs and try to find out what went wrong or things
Maybe
like
the
that.
terminology came recently, but we have been doing this for ages.
We are doing for agents, right? And so we have millions of tools that can do that, right? Now what is happening is observability is entirely in a different dimension. So we have to look at it in terms of graphs of these agents. So the nodes in the graph are the agent and the lines or the edges between those nodes, edges in the graph, represent the relationship or the information flow or the collective decision making that goes on between these agents. So that is what we need to. So that is where observability comes in. I'll give you an example. So one area where this this has a lot of promise. This agentic prompt is drug discovery. So what happens is, say people are researching about a cancer drug, right? So what is a drug? That drug, so we have cancerous growth, and our ultimate goal is to engulf that molecule, which is the cancer cell, or like, that molecule or cell or whatever. We need to engulf it so it stops this multiple like expansion. So it's like cancerous growth is prevented. Now, how does a what is drug discovery? So we take some medicine or we get injected with certain things. So those are also molecules. And in molecules, so I'm going on because this is part of one of my research papers. So there is a molecule, there are multiple atoms which are certain angles, so 3D angles to each other. And there are multiple forces that act on these atoms. And when they are trying to engulf a cancerous growth, the forces should enact in such a way that they are able to engulf that cancer cell, right? And there can be there can be millions of factors. So these forces, there are at least 7 to 8 different types of forces that are acting at different angles. So there are multiple vectors that come into play when we are looking for it. Now, it may not always be possible to find one perfect medicine for cancer. There are partial solutions. So we can find out medicines which are partially successful, so they are able to at least delay the process of cancer growth. So those type of information is also required. But how to get that sort of information? That is where observability comes in. So when there are decisions being made and so if we go travel down the graph or travel through multiple parts of the tree, if we travel downwards, we see that certain things are more successful than certain others. So probably certain drugs under certain conditions, right? There are conditions based on which those can change. Those can be body temperature, those can be activity. There are multiple things. So there are certain paths which are more promising, and that is where we can build up further research on. So that is important information that needs to be in. Whereas we can see there are certain local opinion where we think we found a solution, but probably that is not the best solution because there are certain loopholes we thought of. We didn't think of. The problem is, so far we knew exactly what path we could predict that this is the path it will go and this is what will happen. So that was deterministic. Now, with the probabilistic nature, we need to be very mindful of how the behavior is emerging towards a solution, towards a perfect solution. Right? So
Excellent.
that is, thank you.
Excellent. So our last question for the conversation, before we go into the rapid fire round. As AI evolves from a simple tool into a collaborative ecosystem of intelligent agent, now people are kind of aware of. The role of the leaders and the teams will also need to evolve. Working with AI agent swarms is not just about understanding technology, it's about learning how to collaborate with the autonomous system. For example, in a product organizations, AI agents may analyze customer feedback, predict risk, prioritize backlog, and recommend decisions in real time, while human focus more on strategy, judgment, ethics, and governance. So this requires a shift in the mindset from managing tasks to orchestrating intelligence, from rigid planning to continuous adaptation, and from viewing AI not just as a tool, but to treat it as a collaborative digital teammate. At the same time, teams may need new skills around AI literacy, critical thinking, decision validation, governance, and human AI collaboration. So, as AI agent swarms become more common, what skills and mindset shift do leaders and the teams need to work effectively with the AI agent swarms?
First, there is good news for us. Who likes managers? Nobody likes managers. So this micromanagers will not be useful in agentic swarms anymore. So everybody should have a system viewpoint. So all managers should have a system way of thinking, looking at it at an overall level, at an observability level, at a level where you are uh, observing and probably partially controlling the environment where these things are working, not controlling the behavior of people, behavior of agents. So there we have to understand how to act in such systems. So this system thinking, how the system works as a whole, how the agents collaborate, how do they exchange information, and what does a good solution look like? How do we know that? Right? The agent may tell us something, but is that the correct thing? Is there bias? So that sort of thinking, that system thinking is more becomes more and more relevant. So people should stop thinking about controlling people's work. That okay, you're given this job, you do it. You have to come out of that and understand more in terms of a system that is trying to build something, right? So that that skill needs to increase more and more. We have to understand what are these agentic systems, what are these form systems, and
Right.
look at those graphs instead of just linear logic. Think in terms of those exploratory situations.
Excellent. Now let's have like lot of serious discussions, lot of great insight, but now let's get into little fun. Let's go into a rapid fire round. If AI agent swarms were an animal kingdom, which creature best represents the future of AI and why?
I'll say honeybees because those produce the sweetest products, but they are the most complex and they have the most complex rituals by which they exchange information, optimize their problem. So that's the first answer.
Nice. One word that best describes the next evolution of AI.
Emergent.
Emergent.
So it's
Okay.
emerging intelligence. So intelligence that cannot be predicted from before. It's
Correct.
emergent.
Centralized AI or decentralized swarms, which scales better in the long run?
Of course, decentralized forms, because that is where true scalability works, where there are different viewpoints, different ways of exploring the solution.
Correct. What is more important in swarm AI? Speed, coordination, or adaptability?
I would say adaptability is most important because unless agents are able to adapt themselves, they're not able to. And just I remember something that I thought of saying is that in the animal kingdom, we can kill people can kill ants, or ants can get killed, or bees can get killed because of accident, and there is no turning back. They are dead. Agents are fortunately they are just small processes running inside the memory. You get killed, we can have immediately spring up new instances. So that
Right.
adaptability is very important. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
If AI could simulate 14 million futures, what is that one thing humans should still control?
Right. So what AI works, so I'd say in one word, the answer would be the why.
Hmm.
So agents would tell you the how to do things. But what is the value? The value is what humans should bring in. So what is the value in doing something?
Correct. Which industry will be disrupted first by AI agent swarms?
First, candidate for that would be finance because of
Finance.
simply the volume of
Absolutely.
things. And next would
Correct.
be cybersecurity
Hmm.
because that is also very scary.
One capability today in today's AI lacks the swarm intelligence could unlock.
Right. Exploration of stuff.
Exploration. Right. What is the biggest risk? Rock AI agents or poorly governed human decisions?
Always poorly governed human decisions. That's
Right.
always. That's stay true forever. Garbage in, garbage out.
Correct. In one sentence, how would you explain AI agent swarms in a non-technical audience? I think you already did, but still.
Mm. It's a group of intelligent individuals who have different viewpoints and collectively arrive at a decision.
Brilliant. Excellent summary. 5 years from now, assistant, collaborator, or autonomous decision maker, which role will AI primarily play?
It's a tough question to guess, but I would say it will be more of a collaborative nature. AI will become more collaborative.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's an excellent conversation, Kaushikda. Thank you so much. And we are on time. Any question from the audience? Anyone?
Subrata, it was a wonderful discussion. So only point where I am just still wondering right now is it's a distributed intelligence with the swarms in place. And again, we are talking about a centralized function. So this is the point. I mean, coming back from distribution to again centralization, that is the path where the risk is there, or it involves a lot of cost, or again we come back to that data systems cost, three parameters which are guiding our AI implementation and AI emergence in different sectors. So is it I mean, how do we think of a solution there?
That is a very good question, Sudakshina. Sudakshina. So the problem is, so we discussed about this coordination problem, right? How do agents coordinate? So what happens is these signals that agents are a success. So there are certain paths are more successful than others will be communicated by means of shared memory or vector database. And at some point, we do have to converge upon one particular movement, which is most suitable for us. And it's very easy to say that our centralized part ends where we put a single goal and spread out to the agent. So you do whatever you like, but you solve this problem for me, right? So if it could have been that simple, the world would have been much easier. But the point is that these agent agent swarms will do their exploration and come up with not just one solution, maybe a group of solutions. And that is where we need to use our intelligence or judgment to find out if it's really worth taking that risk. Say probably, say we are in a financial world. There is one agent who sees that there is going to be calamity, there is going to be World War II, and that is why this is the most robust solution, and this is what we should do. But do we really think there is a possibility of fallback? Because every solution, remember, has an associated cost. So if we are to be the safest person, so well, there is one saying, I think I can't resist saying that the most secure systems are the systems where nobody can enter, right? So if we have a system which nobody can enter, then there's no point in having that system. No, it is most secure. It's not, there's no point. So thing is that if there are associated costs, so we have to then make a trade-off that whether it's even worth spending that amount of cost because of a scenario which probably is a very distant scenario. There's not much likeliness in that happening. So that is where the central observation, the control comes into play. Not in the area where we are dictating things to agents that you do this, you do that. Let them run free and let them come up with a group of most optimal solutions. Now we see which is most cost effective for me because my costs are limited. My funds are limited. Cannot be the most secure or most robust solution. Cannot afford. Right?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you. In that case, last final closing line from my end. So agentic AI is not just as a technological leap, it's a governance challenge. The organizations that succeed will be the ones that design for responsibility as deliberately as they design for intelligence. Thank you so much, Kaushik, for your time, and thanks, audience. I know Sunday morning is always difficult, but still you guys make time regularly and join. So thank you so much, and I'm happy that we are continuing with this journey, and I'm sure like we'll be getting a lot more insightful discussions or conversations in the coming days. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Great.